It was supposed to be a routine press conference for the upcoming blockbuster movie. Sandra Bullock, one of Hollywood's most beloved stars, was dressed to impress, exuding the kind of confidence that only a seasoned actress could pull off. But, as the cameras flashed and the reporters eagerly fired their questions, things took a dramatic turn. Without warning, the director of the film, a man known for his perfectionism, slammed Sandra in front of the entire press room. His words were sharp, biting, accusing her of being unprepared, unprofessional, and lacking the necessary commitment to bring the character to life. The shock in Sandra's eyes was palpable. She was stunned, humiliated. How could he do this to her? Her heart raced as the words hung in the air, each one cutting deeper than the last. In the midst of the onslaught, Sandra could feel the stares of the room, the whispers of the journalists, the cameras capturing every second of her discomfort. This wasn't just an isolated incident, it was a public shaming, one that was bound to make headlines. The director had just thrown her under the bus in front of an audience, and there was nothing she could do but sit there, trying to maintain her composure. How would you feel if you were in Sandra's shoes right now? What would you do if someone publicly humiliated you like that? Sandra didn't know how to respond. She wanted to snap back, to defend herself, to show the world that this wasn't fair, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she sat there, a mix of disbelief and anger swirling inside her. She had worked so hard for this role, poured her heart and soul into the project, and now this. As the press conference continued, Sandra felt a wave of emotions, shame, frustration and confusion. The room buzzed with tension. Every time the director's words echoed in her mind, a piece of her pride chipped away. She wasn't just a victim of criticism. She was a target. And in that moment, Sandra realized that her life, her career, and her reputation were on the line. Sandra Bullock had been in Hollywood long enough to know the pressures of fame. From the moment she made her big break in Speed, her career skyrocketed, and she became one of the most beloved actresses in the world. Yet despite the acclaim, the awards, and the adoration of fans, there was always an underlying tension in Sandra's life, a constant battle to prove herself. Growing up in Virginia, Sandra was always the underdog. She wasn't the typical Hollywood beauty when she started out, and her journey to stardom was anything but glamorous. She worked hard, took on challenging roles, and put in the hours to hone her craft. But, just like in every industry, talent wasn't always enough. Hollywood had its own set of rules, and if you didn't play them right, you could easily get pushed aside. But Sandra wasn't the type to back down. She fought for every role, every opportunity, and even after becoming an A-list star, she still faced challenges. Some of those challenges were internal, like self-doubt and fear of failure, and some were external, like dealing with difficult directors, producers, and colleagues who constantly tested her boundaries. Her friendship with Keanu Reeves, however, had always been a source of comfort. Their bond went back to their days working together on Speed. They had a natural connection, both on and off screen. Keanu, known for his kindness and humility, was one of the few in Hollywood who had never treated Sandra like just another colleague. He respected her work, supported her through tough times, and they shared a unique understanding of the pressures of fame. Keanu had seen Sandra go through highs and lows in her career, and he admired her resilience. He wasn't just a co-star, he was a true friend, and Sandra trusted him more than anyone else in the industry. They had shared personal stories, confided in each other during moments of doubt, and most importantly, they had a deep mutual respect for one another. But despite their strong friendship, Sandra's recent struggles on set were putting a strain on her confidence. She had been working tirelessly on this new project, and everything had been going smoothly until the press conference. The public shaming by the director had shaken her to the core. Sandra was no stranger to criticism, but the way it was delivered in front of the cameras was something she couldn't easily shake off. It was a humiliation she didn't deserve. Keanu, on the other hand, was outraged. He had seen the footage from the press conference and couldn't believe what he was watching. Sandra was one of the hardest-working, most professional people he knew, and for a director to treat her like that was unacceptable. He had always been the kind of person who couldn't stand injustice, especially when it affected someone he cared about. Keanu knew something had to be done. He couldn't just sit by and watch as Sandra suffered in silence. The next step was clear. He was going to confront the director. What would you do if one of your closest friends was publicly humiliated? Like Sandra? Would you stand up for them or would you let it slide? Let us know in the comments below. Keanu wasn't the type to make a scene, but this time he was prepared to take matters into his own hands. He wouldn't allow Sandra to be torn down by someone who didn't understand her worth, and he wasn't going to let her face this battle alone. The showdown was coming, and it would be a battle for both justice and friendship. But little did Keanu know, the director wasn't going to back down easily. This was just the beginning. The days following the press conference were some of the most difficult Sandra had ever faced in her career. She was bombarded by messages, some sympathetic, some critical, and others downright harsh. The press ran wild with the story, painting her as unprepared and unprofessional, a stark contrast to the image she had spent years building. Sandra tried to brush it off, but the words from the director echoed in her mind constantly. She wasn't just upset with him, she was angry at herself for not speaking up, for letting the humiliation happen without a fight. But she knew that the time for silence had passed. She had to take control of the situation, even if it meant standing up to the very people she had trusted. In the meantime, Keanu had been quietly plotting. He knew that Sandra wasn't going to sit idly by, but he also understood her need to handle this in her own way. However, as the days went on, he saw how deeply the situation was affecting her. Sandra was becoming withdrawn, barely speaking, to anyone on set, and it was clear she was carrying the weight of the public shaming. Keanu couldn't stand it. He wasn't just going to let the director get away with this, nor was he going to let Sandra fight this battle alone. So he decided to take matters into his own hands. One afternoon, he tracked down the director at a local cafe, a place where he knew he could catch him alone. The director had been making a series of public appearances to clarify his comments about Sandra, but his statements only dug him deeper into controversy. Keanu knew that confronting him in a neutral setting might be the best way to handle this. As he walked into the cafe, Keanu's calm demeanor contrasted with the intensity of the situation. He had always been known for his cool, collected attitude, but today was different. Today there was a fire in his eyes. "Let me guess," the director said, spotting Keanu before he even took a seat. "You're here to lecture me on my methods?" Keanu sat down without a word, staring the director down. His silence spoke volumes. "You humiliated Sandra," Keanu finally said, his voice calm but filled with a quiet intensity. "What you did was wrong. She didn't deserve that, and neither does anyone else. You could have handled it privately, but instead, you chose to tear her down in front of the entire world." "Why?" the director sneered, clearly defensive. "She was unprofessional. I had to make a point." "By humiliating her," Keanu replied sharply. "You're supposed to be a leader, a director. It's your job to guide your actors, not break them down publicly. Sandra's not just an actress. She's a human being, and she deserves respect. The whole world saw what you did. You owe her an apology. A real one." The director scoffed clearly, not expecting this kind of confrontation. "I'm not apologizing for doing my job. You're not doing your job, you're being petty," Keanu shot back. "And if you don't apologize, I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about what happened behind the scenes. I'll make sure your career feels the backlash." The tension between them was palpable. Keanu's words hung in the air, heavy and full of promise. The director wasn't used to being confronted like this, and it was clear that Keanu's calm, no-nonsense approach was catching him off guard. "You think you can control me, Keanu?" The director sneered. Keanu leaned in, his eyes unwavering. "I'm not trying to control you. I'm just making it clear that if you don't do the right thing, I'll make sure the world knows just how you really operate. I won't let you ruin Sandra's career because of your ego, that's a promise." The director sat back, his face reddening with frustration. It was clear he was weighing his options, but Keanu's words had struck a nerve. After a long pause, he finally muttered, "Fine, I'll apologize, but don't think this is over." Keanu stood up, nodding once, and walked out of the cafe, feeling the weight of the moment. He knew the director hadn't been completely sincere, but it was a step in the right direction. The apology would come, but Keanu knew it wouldn't erase the damage that had already been done. If you were Keanu, would you have stood up for your friend like this, or would you have let it slide? Share your thoughts below. Keanu knew that this confrontation was only the beginning. The director might have agreed to apologize, but Keanu couldn't help but feel there was more at play. This wasn't just about the public shaming anymore. It was about standing up for what was right, even if it meant challenging those who held power in the industry. And for Sandra, things were about to take another dramatic turn. After his intense meeting with the director, Keanu knew that words alone wouldn't fix what had been broken. The apology, though necessary, was just a small part of the solution. He was going to have to take more drastic measures to ensure that Sandra's reputation wasn't permanently tarnished. The industry could be ruthless, and once a scandal like this took root, it could be nearly impossible to remove it. Keanu's first step was to rally support for Sandra behind the scenes. He reached out to her closest friends in the industry, actors, producers, and even the crew members from past projects who knew Sandra's work ethic and professionalism. Keanu wasn't just going to defend her. He was going to show the world what they didn't see, the real Sandra Bullock. As he went about contacting her allies, he made sure to keep Sandra in the loop, though he could sense she was still hesitant. She didn't want to turn this into a bigger spectacle, but she knew she couldn't just let it slide. The director's public shaming had shaken her to her core, and now she found herself questioning everything: the film industry, her worth, and even her own strength. But with Keanu standing by her side, Sandra found the courage to keep moving forward. The next major step came when Keanu organized a press event, a strategic, controlled opportunity for Sandra to address the situation directly. He knew it was risky. The public was already divided, some siding with her and others against her. But Keanu believed that Sandra needed to take control of her narrative. If she allowed the director's accusations to go unchallenged, it would be the media's truth, not hers. The event was scheduled for the following week. The press room buzzed with anticipation, and the media couldn't help but speculate on what Sandra's response would be. Would she come out and apologize? Would she throw the director under the bus? Everyone was waiting for her to make her move. When Sandra walked into the press room, she did so with the same grace and confidence that had earned her fame in the first place. There was no sign of the woman who had been publicly humiliated just days earlier. This was the Sandra Bullock who had survived years in the spotlight, the one who could handle any challenge that came her way. But beneath that polished exterior, there was still a storm brewing inside her. Keanu stood by her side, offering her silent support. He knew this was her moment to shine, and he trusted her to take the lead. The reporters were quick to start firing questions, some respectful, others loaded with criticism. But Sandra didn't flinch. She took a deep breath and addressed the room. "I want to start by saying that what happened at the press conference was deeply hurtful, not just for me, but for everyone involved in the project," Sandra began, her voice steady. "I've been in this industry long enough to know that things don't always go as planned, but there's no excuse for the way I was treated. Publicly shaming someone, especially a colleague, is never the answer. We're all in this together, and we need to support each other, not tear each other down." The room went silent. Sandra's words hung in the air, and for the first time the journalists saw a side of her that they hadn't expected: vulnerability mixed with unwavering strength. "I'm not here to vilify anyone, but I do believe that we need to have more respect for one another in this industry," she continued. "I'm proud of my work, and I stand by my commitment to this film. I'm not perfect, but I give everything I have to the projects I'm involved in, and I hope that moving forward we can all approach each other with the same level of respect and understanding." Her words weren't just an apology, they were a declaration. Sandra wasn't going to let this define her. She wasn't going to let one moment of public humiliation erase all of the years of hard work and dedication she had put into her career. What do you think of Sandra's response? Was it the right move? What would you have said in her position? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. The press room was still. The tension that had been building for days seemed to dissipate as Sandra finished her statement. Keanu looked at her with pride. He knew that this was just the beginning of Sandra's journey to reclaim her narrative. There would be more battles to fight, more challenges to face, but today she had taken the first step in standing up for herself. The press event was a pivotal moment for Sandra. Her strength and poise in the face of such adversity earned her the admiration of many, and for a while the backlash seemed to fade into the background. Sandra felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had regained control of her image, and the world was beginning to see her in a new light. Yet deep inside she knew the war wasn't over. The director's apology hadn't fully settled the score, and she could feel that there was still tension in the air. Keanu, ever the protector, was determined to make sure that this situation didn't simply die down with a few well-placed words. He had been biding his time, but he knew it was only a matter of time before things would escalate once again. The director, for all his public words of regret, hadn't truly taken responsibility for the damage he had done to Sandra's career. Then, the unexpected happened. It came in the form of a leaked video. A private conversation between the director and a member of the production team, one that had been secretly recorded, surfaced online. The footage was raw and unfiltered, and it completely shattered the public apology the director had given. In the video, the director ranted about Sandra's lack of dedication and how difficult she was to work with. He belittled her in ways that were not only unprofessional but deeply hurtful. "She's a star, yes, but she thinks she can get away with anything because of her name," he sneered. "She doesn't deserve the lead role. I'll make sure she knows her place." This is just the beginning. The video spread like wildfire across social media. The comments flooded in, outraged, disgusted, and unforgiving. Fans, fellow actors, and industry professionals who had supported the director's earlier apology now saw him for who he truly was: a manipulative, power-hungry individual who had no respect for the people he worked with. Keanu was livid when he saw the video. His blood boiled, not just for Sandra, but for anyone who had ever been mistreated in this way. He knew this was the turning point. The director had crossed a line that could no longer be ignored. The phone call came late that night. Sandra was in her apartment, trying to unwind from the chaos of the past few days, when Keanu's name flashed across her screen. She answered immediately. "Have you seen the video?" Keanu's voice was tight with fury. Sandra's heart sank. "Yes, I just watched it. How could he do that? After everything?" Keanu exhaled deeply, the anger palpable in his voice. "He made a mistake, and now I'm going to make sure he pays for it. You're not going to have to deal with this alone anymore, Sandra. I'm taking this to the next level." Sandra was silent for a moment. She could feel the weight of the situation. She had trusted the director, had given him her best, and now he was trying to destroy her. But what Keanu was suggesting, it felt like war. "Keanu," she began softly, her voice shaking, "I don't want this to escalate further. I don't want to make enemies, but I can't just stand by and let him do this." Keanu's response was firm. "This isn't about making enemies. It's about making sure that people like him are held accountable. What he did to you was beyond unacceptable. You don't deserve that, and I won't let it go unnoticed." Sandra felt her emotions overwhelm her. It wasn't just about the director anymore. It was about everything she had sacrificed, the countless hours she'd spent perfecting her craft, only for it to be diminished by one person's ego. "What are you going to do?" Sandra asked, her voice barely a whisper. Keanu's answer was simple yet full of resolve. "I'm going to make sure this gets the attention it deserves. I'll go public with this video, and I'll make sure the whole industry knows who this director really is. He won't be able to hide anymore." Sandra's chest tightened as the reality of the situation sank in. The director had crossed a line, and now it was time to take action. She wasn't going to hide in the shadows any longer. With Keanu at her side, she knew they could make the world see the truth. What would you do if you were in Sandra's shoes? Would you fight back or let it go? We want to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below. The next few days were a whirlwind. Keanu and Sandra carefully planned their next move. They knew releasing the video could destroy the director's career, but they also knew it could potentially damage Sandra's reputation if not done correctly. They needed to control the narrative. Finally, after much consideration, They made their decision. Keanu shared the video publicly on his social media, adding a powerful message. No one should ever be subjected to this kind of abuse. This is who the director really is. This is the truth, and we will not be silenced. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Fans, celebrities, and even other filmmakers came forward to support Sandra. The director's career quickly crumbled as the industry rallied behind the woman he had tried to destroy. His apology was dismissed as nothing more than a hollow attempt to cover up his cruelty, and his reputation, once a respected figure in Hollywood, was shattered beyond repair. Sandra watched the unfolding drama from a distance, her heart heavy, but her spirit lifted. She had fought back, and in doing so she had reclaimed her power. What had started as a nightmare of public humiliation had turned into a powerful statement about resilience and justice. The victory wasn't just about taking down a director, it was about standing up for herself and every other person who had been silenced. And with Keanu by her side, Sandra knew that the road ahead, though still filled with challenges, would no longer be one she had to face alone. This story isn't over, though. What do you think will happen next for Sandra? Will the industry truly change? Drop your thoughts in the comments and make sure to hit that subscribe button for more. As the dust settled, Sandra felt a sense of peace. She had taken control of her own story, and in doing so she had found the strength she didn't even know she had. And the next chapter of her career, it was bound to be even more powerful than the last. The storm had passed, but Sandra knew the scars would remain. In the weeks following the public exposure of the director's true nature, she began to slowly rebuild her career, brick by brick. The entertainment world had been shaken by the events, but as always, things moved fast in Hollywood. The audience quickly shifted their focus to the next big story. But for Sandra, the healing process was only just beginning. The director had been blacklisted from major projects, and his reputation was left in tatters. He had tried to salvage his career by apologizing publicly again, but this time it fell on deaf ears. The industry wasn't so easily fooled anymore, and neither were Sandra's supporters. Sandra's first move was to take a brief break from the limelight. She needed time to process everything: the pain, the humiliation, the support, and most importantly, the growth. During this time, she focused on her family and friends, those who had been there for her before the scandal, and those who stood by her through it all. Keanu had been an unexpected rock in her life, but it was clear to Sandra that he wasn't just her friend. He was someone who believed in her when others didn't. A few months later, Sandra received a call that would change everything. A new director, one known for his focus on empowering women and creating inclusive work environments, had reached out to her about a role in his upcoming film. The movie was based on a powerful, real-life story, and it was the perfect opportunity for Sandra to once again prove her talent to the world. "I've heard about everything that happened with you," the director told her over the phone. "But what really stands out to me is how you handled yourself. You didn't let it break you. That's the kind of strength I want in my cast. You've been through the fire, Sandra, and now it's time for you to rise from it." Sandra felt a lump form in her throat as the weight of his words sank in. This was the kind of validation she had been waiting for, not just for her acting abilities, but for her character, for her strength. It was a moment that made all the pain, all the drama feel worth it. "This role, it's everything I've wanted," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "I've been through a lot, but I think it's time to put all of that behind me and move forward. I'm ready." She took the role. Keanu was the first person she called to share the news. "So you know I'm going to support you no matter what, right?" he said, his voice warm and encouraging. "You've got this, Sandra. I've always known you had it in you." Sandra smiled as she looked out at the Los Angeles skyline. Her heart, once heavy with doubt, was now filled with hope. She knew there was still work to be done, but the worst was over. In the months that followed, Sandra poured herself into the new role with the kind of passion and dedication that only she could give. The film was a critical success, and Sandra's performance was hailed as one of her best. It was a reminder to the world that she wasn't just a survivor of a scandal, she was a force to be reckoned with. What do you think it takes to truly overcome adversity in a career like Sandra's? Is it about resilience or something more? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. As the movie's success grew, so did Sandra's reputation. The industry began to view her not just as an actress, but as a symbol of strength and perseverance. She wasn't just the woman who had been shamed by a director. She was the woman who had come out stronger on the other side. And Keanu? He was there every step of the way, watching his friend flourish. He didn't need any accolades or recognition. Seeing Sandra succeed was enough for him. In a way, it felt like his quiet support had played a role in her victory. But Sandra knew that her journey didn't end with just one success. She had learned valuable lessons about herself and the industry. The road ahead would still be filled with challenges, but now she was ready for whatever came her way. She was stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever before. Sandra wasn't just a survivor, she was a warrior. The final scene of Sandra's story, however, didn't come in the form of an award or another hit movie. It came when she stood on stage at a press conference and shared her story of resilience with others who had faced similar struggles. She spoke about the importance of standing up for what was right, no matter the consequences, and how the industry could only move forward if it truly respected its artists. "I'm not just here to talk about my journey," she said, her voice steady and inspiring. "I'm here to remind you that you are not alone. We all face battles, but we don't have to face them alone. We have each other, and we have the power to rise above it." Do you think Sandra's story can inspire others in the industry? What would you say to someone who's going through a tough time in their career right now? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. The curtain fell on this chapter of Sandra's life, but the lessons learned would stay with her forever. The fight for respect, for truth, and for personal strength was far from over, but with each step, she was one step closer to ensuring that her story would be remembered not for the scandal, but for the courage that followed it. And so, Sandra Bullock had reclaimed her power, proving once again that no matter how hard life tried to knock her down, she would always rise, stronger than before. As the lights on Sandra's latest film dimmed and the accolades began to pour in, the weight of the journey she had gone through didn't fade. It only grew more profound. It had been months since the scandal with the director had first hit the public eye, and though the press had moved on to newer stories, Sandra knew that the lessons she'd learned from it would stay with her for the rest of her life. Her career had been reborn in the best way possible, not just with a return to the big screen, but with a newfound understanding of herself. She was no longer just a Hollywood star. She had become an advocate for change. With each new project, Sandra was determined to reshape the narrative. She was proving that she could be both the kind of actress who inspired admiration and the kind of woman who stood up for her truth. The impact she was having on the industry was profound, and it went beyond what any critic or studio could have imagined. But as Sandra stood before the press at another event, this time not to defend herself, but to highlight the strides the industry had made in the wake of her journey, she couldn't help but reflect on the immense support she had received along the way. Keanu, her ever-present ally, was there, as he had always been, encouraging her every step of the way. The media buzzed around Sandra, eager to hear what she would say next, but it was clear from the way she held herself that this wasn't about one more soundbite or glossy headline. She had fought for more than just her own career. She had fought to create a lasting change for future generations of actors, especially women who had faced discrimination or been silenced. "I never imagined that one mistake, one act of cruelty, could turn into a movement, but here we are," Sandra said, her voice clear, her gaze unwavering. "I've always believed that we are all capable of more than we think, but we can't do it alone. We need each other. We need to raise our voices, stand up for what's right, and support each other in ways that go beyond the surface. The industry has to evolve. It has to be a place of respect, not just for the talent, but for the human being behind the talent." She paused, letting her words sink in. The room was silent, a rare moment of reflection amidst the usual press noise. "This isn't just my victory," Sandra continued, her eyes scanning the room, meeting the gaze of every reporter. "It's a victory for anyone who has ever been told they weren't good enough or been shamed into silence. It's about fighting for your right to exist, boldly, proudly, unapologetically. If I could go through this and come out stronger, then anyone can. That's what I want people to take away from this: strength, resilience, and unity. We can change things, but it takes all of us. The press erupted into applause. It wasn't a simple applause for a statement. It was the recognition of the change she had instigated. Sandra had not just weathered the storm. She had become the force of the winds that could carry others to safety. Later that evening, Keanu sat beside Sandra at the after-party for the movie's premiere. As they clinked their glasses in celebration, Keanu spoke with the same quiet sincerity that had become so familiar to Sandra over the months. "You did it, Sandra," he said softly. "You didn't just survive, you thrived. The whole industry is going to be different because of you." Sandra smiled, her eyes reflecting both the exhaustion and pride of the journey. "We did it, Keanu. This was a team effort, and you were my biggest supporter through it all." Keanu's grin spread across his face, but he remained modest. "I didn't do anything. I just made sure you didn't give up." Sandra laughed, the sound of it warm and genuine. "Well, I'm glad you didn't let me." As the evening wore on, Sandra took a moment to step away from the crowd, finding a quiet corner to collect her thoughts. She had been through the ringer, public humiliation, the constant scrutiny, the emotional toll. But now, standing on the other side of it all, she felt empowered in a way she had never expected. Sandra thought about all of the things she had learned from the ordeal. It wasn't just about resilience. It was about choosing to rewrite the narrative, to make a conscious decision to emerge stronger after being knocked down. She'd fought for herself, yes, but more importantly, she had fought for the next woman who would face the same challenges. The world had witnessed her transformation, but for Sandra, the true reward wasn't the applause. It was the understanding that she had played a part in creating an industry that valued people over power. That, she knew, was her legacy. What legacy do you think Sandra is leaving behind? How do you think the industry has changed because of her? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more inspiring stories. As the night came to an end, and Sandra stepped out into the cool night air, she realized that this was only the beginning. Her journey wasn't over. It was just getting started. She had learned how to stand tall, even in the face of adversity. And now she would continue to fight for the values that mattered to her. She wasn't just an actress anymore. She was a symbol of strength, perseverance, and the unshakable belief that one person could make a difference. And as Sandra walked into the future, the world was watching, ready for whatever she had to offer next. Sandra's career had been an inspiring roller coaster. But now, with the dust settling on the drama with the director, she found herself reflecting on her true purpose. She had been through the highs and lows of Hollywood, with all the fame, glamour, and pitfalls that came with it. But now, as she stood on the other side of the scandal, Sandra knew that what she had achieved was far more than just acting accolades. She had built a foundation for a deeper, more meaningful impact. It wasn't long before Sandra began to take on roles that reflected this newfound sense of self. No longer was she simply chasing box office hits. She wanted to be a part of projects that meant something, not just for her career, but for the world. The kinds of roles that would challenge societal norms, create conversations, and inspire change. She had always been a talented actress, but now she was determined to use that talent to elevate stories that mattered. Her first big decision after her triumphant return was to accept a role in an indie film, a drama based on the life of a real woman who had struggled against the odds to become a trailblazer in a male-dominated industry. The movie wasn't a typical blockbuster. It wasn't about flashy explosions or heart-pounding action scenes. Instead, it was about a woman's quiet strength, her resilience, and her ability to change the world by staying true to herself. The script hit Sandra in a way that no film had in years. She knew this was the kind of movie that would make her heart sing. The filming process was exhausting but rewarding. Sandra threw herself into the character, embracing the challenges that came with portraying such a powerful yet vulnerable role. She knew this was her moment to tell a story that needed to be told, to honor those who had fought the same battles she had faced, and to inspire others to rise above their struggles, no matter how difficult the path. But Sandra's journey wasn't just confined to the screen anymore. She had started to get involved behind the scenes too. She wanted to ensure that the industry she loved was evolving in ways that allowed artists, especially women, to thrive. Sandra had taken on a new role as a vocal advocate for the better treatment of women in Hollywood, pushing for greater diversity in the types of roles offered to women and working with industry leaders to create a more inclusive and supportive environment for actors of all backgrounds. She also started speaking at events, attending panels, and becoming a part of organizations dedicated to eradicating the toxic practices that had once run rampant in the entertainment industry. Sandra had become a voice for change, and her influence was beginning to be felt far beyond the studio lots. Keanu, always the supportive friend, was right there beside her. His own career had been flourishing, but he too was becoming more involved in the behind-the-scenes work that helped elevate not just his career but others as well. They often attended events together, both advocating for a new era in Hollywood, one where respect for all artists took precedence over fame and fortune. "What are you thinking about?" Keanu asked Sandra one evening as they walked down the red carpet at a charity event. It was a quiet moment amidst the flashing cameras, and Sandra had been lost in her thoughts for a while. "I'm thinking about how much this all means," Sandra said, her voice soft but steady. "It's more than just getting back at someone. It's about creating a space where others can speak up, and where change doesn't just come from the top down. It needs to come from every direction." Keanu nodded, a smile playing at the corner of his lips. "You've always been the kind of person who takes charge, Sandra. I've watched you fight for what's right, even when it wasn't easy." Sandra looked at him, a sincere expression crossing her face. "I couldn't have done it without you, Keanu. You were there when I didn't even believe in myself, and now I get to do the same for others. It's not just about me anymore. It's about the bigger picture." As their conversation faded into the background of the event, Sandra realized how far she had come. She had started as a star, but now she was much more than that. She was a role model, a leader, and a champion for the kind of change the industry so desperately needed. The next chapter of her life was unfolding before her eyes, and she was ready for whatever came next. What do you think it takes to create real change in an industry like Hollywood? Is it just about speaking out, or does it take more than that? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more inspiring stories. As the event wound down, Sandra found herself reflecting on the incredible journey she had been on. She had not only faced down an industry villain, but had turned that challenge into a mission for change. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every artist who had ever been silenced, diminished, or forgotten. Sandra knew that the road ahead would continue to have its challenges. Hollywood, for all its progress, was still an industry that often prioritized the wrong things. But she also knew that she was no longer alone in her mission. She had allies, mentors, and a growing movement of people who were committed to making things right. And as Sandra looked toward the future, she knew one thing for sure. No matter what the world threw her way, she would never stop fighting. Because this wasn't just about acting. It was about creating an industry and a world where people could thrive without fear of being knocked down. What do you think Sandra's next move will be? Will she continue to fight for change, or will she focus on her career? Drop your thoughts in the comments and be sure to subscribe for more updates on Sandra's journey. With her head held high and her heart full of purpose, Sandra Bullock had stepped into the next phase of her life, not just as a star, but as a leader, a warrior, and an advocate for a better tomorrow. The best was yet to come. As the months passed, Sandra's influence only grew. What started as a personal battle had morphed into something larger, something that would continue to echo throughout Hollywood and beyond. She had become a beacon of hope for those who had been silenced, discriminated against, or made to feel like they didn't belong. Sandra had not only reclaimed her career, but she had also reclaimed her voice, and with it, she was determined to make sure that others would have theirs. Hollywood, for all its glitz and glamour, was a world that could chew you up and spit you out. But Sandra wasn't just a survivor. She had used her experience to spark meaningful conversations, and those conversations were turning into actions. There was a noticeable shift in the industry, one that Sandra had fought hard for. The pressure of being a public figure, an advocate, and an actress at the same time weighed heavily on her, but Sandra had learned to manage it. She was no longer just reacting to the world, she was actively shaping it. She was speaking out about the need for more diverse roles, pushing for equal pay and advocating for mental health awareness in the industry. Sandra wasn't just content with her own success. She wanted to create opportunities for others, especially women and marginalized groups. One of the most meaningful projects that Sandra took on was the creation of a mentorship program for young actors and actresses who didn't have the same access to Hollywood's elite circles. It was a move that showed not just her commitment to the industry, but her passion for empowering the next generation. She had worked hard to get where she was, and she wanted to make sure the road was a little easier for those coming after her. The program, named Lights, Camera, Change, would offer not just advice and career guidance, but also provide funding for acting classes, networking opportunities, and a safe space for budding talent to explore their craft without fear of judgment or exploitation. "I remember when I first started," Sandra said during the program's launch event. "I didn't have all the answers, and there were so many people who tried to tell me who I should be. But no one ever really taught me how to stand firm in my own identity, how to speak up, or how to say no when something didn't feel right. I want to change that. I want these young actors and actresses to know that they don't have to conform to anyone else's expectations of them. They can define their own path." The response to the program was overwhelming. Young actors from all walks of life flooded the application process, eager for the opportunity to learn from Sandra, who was now regarded not just as an actress, but as a mentor and a changemaker. She hosted workshops, one-on-one sessions, and even helped these talented individuals land roles in films and TV shows. And through it all, Keanu was by her side. He had always believed in Sandra, and now he was helping her make this program a success. Together they were pushing Hollywood toward a future where the industry would no longer be defined by its toxic practices, but by its ability to nurture talent in a way that was both empowering and inclusive. Sandra had not forgotten the lessons she learned during the scandal with the director. She had always believed that vulnerability was a strength, not a weakness. By speaking out about the injustices she had faced, she had given others the courage to do the same. The industry was starting to change, but it would take time. And Sandra was committed to being a part of that change, leading with integrity and kindness. But her work wasn't just about Hollywood anymore. Sandra had become involved in several philanthropic efforts, particularly those that supported women's rights and mental health initiatives. She partnered with charities and organizations to create a more supportive environment for women everywhere, from small towns to big cities, and from high school classrooms to boardrooms. She knew that, just as she had fought for her place in Hollywood, there were countless women out there fighting for their own voices to be heard, their own opportunities to be given. As the years passed, Sandra's reputation in the industry grew, not just for her talent, but for her advocacy. Her work and dedication continued to inspire countless others. She became a role model for many, and while her name was synonymous with major box office hits and critical acclaim, it was the impact she had outside of acting that truly defined her legacy. In a private moment with Keanu, Sandra reflected on how far she had come. They were sitting at a quiet cafe, away from the flashing lights and red carpets, talking about the future. "You know," Sandra said, looking out over the city, "I never expected all of this. I thought it would be about the movies, about the fame. But what's really important to me now is the people. It's seeing the changes, seeing those young actors take the stage with confidence, knowing that they have the support they need. That's what makes all of this worth it." Keanu nodded, his face warm with admiration. "You've always been about more than just the work, Sandra. You've always cared about the people, and I'm proud of everything you've done." Sandra smiled, her heart full of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without people like you. You've been with me through everything, both the good and the bad. And now we get to be a part of something bigger. We get to change things." Keanu's smile was soft, but his eyes held a depth of understanding. "And you will. You already have." As Sandra looked ahead, she knew there was still much more work to be done. The journey that had started with her standing up for herself had turned into a mission to make the world, and Hollywood, a better place for everyone. She was no longer just an actress. She was an architect of change, helping to build an industry and a world where everyone could have a voice. What do you think Sandra's true legacy will be? Will she continue to be a leader in Hollywood's transformation? Or do you think her impact will go beyond the industry? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on Sandra's journey. With that, Sandra stepped into the future, ready to continue her work, ready to lead, and ready to inspire others to fight for what they believe in. The best, as they say, was yet to come.